Hey guys, how you doing? Ron Gigliotti with VIPER Emergency Medical Restraints here with another short tutorial, instructions on how to properly deploy your VIPER restraint. This time I'll be doing it as a left-hand dominant person with my right hand now being my non-dominant hand. So we'll be deploying it to the patient's left side first, so we'll go through some of the steps real quick. So much like in the previous video, you'll go ahead and deploy the restraint by letting it unfurl naturally. I will place the universal stretcher clip between my ring finger and my pinky. I will place the restraint between my thumb, my index finger, and my middle finger. This allows me to make sure and do a visual inspection to make sure that there's no twists or kinks in the webbing that could impede the actual deployment. So we will go ahead and take the patient's, we're doing the left extremity, so we'll go ahead and place the left, my non-dominant hand on the patient's forearm, placing the restraint over the wrist into a position. See, I'm not a lefty, you can tell, onto the lower wrist itself. Once I've done so, I will take my non-dominant hand, I will place it over the cam lever. I will then lift up slightly, allowing my thumb to fit onto that recess, which is the little thumb recess on the cam designed to hold and to receive your thumb. I will then go ahead and pull gentle counter traction, taking up all of the extra loose webbing. Once I've done so, I'm not going to release my non-dominant hand from holding the appendage. I'm going to secure the universal stretcher clip onto the pre-designated spots on the stretcher, the stair chair, or if you're in a hospital, the hospital stretcher. Once I've done so, I will then release my grip on the universal clip, and I will grab the finger loop and pull up that loose webbing. I will do that while also using my non-dominant hand, still holding the appendage, to move the appendage towards the restraint itself to take up that extra loose slack. Once I've done so, I'll then go ahead and check CSM on the patient's wrist itself. I will then check to make sure that the restraint is not too tight or not too loose. So there's a couple things that we can do to kind of troubleshoot this if we've had either one of those scenarios. If in this case it's too loose and I need to kind of tighten it, I just put my hand back into that position and give it a gentle tug. And what that'll do is it takes up that loose webbing. If by chance I've over-tightened this, and you can tell when literally the restraint does not want to rotate, you just simply depress the thumb latch once, and what that does is it releases the teeth and lets a little bit of webbing out. And what that does is it gives you a little bit of extra slack, just to make sure that it's not too tight on the patient's wrist and it's actually comfortable. Once we've done that, we'll go ahead and reassess CSM again, and then you're good to go. We'll go ahead and reset and deploy this now to the patient's opposite side. So now we will go ahead and deploy this to the patient's right extremity using the same arm from the left side. So again, much like on the other side, I'm on the patient's right side now using my left hand. I'll go ahead and let it unfurl naturally. I will then make sure that my hand is holding the universal stretcher clip between my ring finger and my pinky. I will then place the restraint between my thumb, index, and middle finger. I'll do a visual inspection to make sure that there's absolutely no kinks or twists that could impede the actual deployment of the restraint itself. Once I've done that, I will go ahead and quickly place my hand slightly through, but not all the way through, but slightly through the restraint itself, grabbing the patient's wrists and placing the soft restraint on the lower wrist itself. Once I've done that, I will then take my non-dominant hand and place it over the cam. I will lift up slightly and place my thumb on that recess, again, between the upper and lower webbing, like so. Once I've done that, I will then take the actual universal clip and pull away from the patient until I've taken up all of that extra slack. Again, much like we did with the previous deployments, we're not going to let go of the patient's appendage until we've secured the actual universal gate clip. So we'll go ahead and place this on any one of those pre-designated spots that you or your department have designated as an anchor point for the clip. Once you've done that, you'll go ahead, grab the the finger loop, and you'll gently pull counter traction while your non-dominant hand assists by moving the appendage towards the restraint to take up that extra slack into a position of limited movement. Like I said, what you don't want to do is overextend a patient's extremity while you're restraining it. What you want to do is just kind of give them a limited mobility. If by chance the patient becomes non-violent, you can always just lift up gently on the belt tensioner. And what this will do is it will give you all of that slack back so the patient can then have freedom of movement if they needed to without ever having to remove the restraint. And then if you need to tighten it back up, you just simply pull on it and it shortens up that distance again. Much like we did with the previous deployment, what we want to do is always make sure that we have secured and that we have CSMs intact. So once we check the CSMs, you want to make sure that the restraint is not too loose or not too tight. And if it is too loose and spinning too freely, you can just simply pull a little counter traction on it again, and that takes up the loose webbing. If by chance you think it's too tight or the patient complains of that it's uncomfortable, you can just simply depress the latch once, and what that does is release the teeth, and that now gives us some freedom of movement in the restraint so that we don't cause any friction or any sort of undue harm to the patient. Once we've done that, we'll go ahead and reassess CSMs again, and then you're all set. If you have any questions, thoughts, or comments, you want to reach out to us, please feel free to email us, and good luck.